I lived in New York, and they built a big housing project right in the middle of Ossining. Fast forward 20 years, Ossining is one of the places in New York that have a much higher degree of crime.
Whenever you have a higher density of people in a small area, it's going to lead to higher crime. Stuff happens. We're identifying older homes in high opportunity areas that need rehab. So come in, rehab them up to an institutional standard, top of market standards, we can say. So we're creating a great house that may not have been in that same condition available. And we're going to the housing authorities first to help need of their wait list. One of the biggest reasons why investors haven't approached it like we are is it's difficult. It's not easy.
What's so difficult about it?
It's working through the kind of red tape and bureaucracy of the housing authorities and dealing with the potential pushback in certain neighborhoods.
Yeah, that could be a killer for anybody. Hi, this is Adam Stern and Ted Farry. This is Unleashed on Everezi Radio. How you doing, Ted?
Hey, Adam. Good to see you, man. How are you?
Good to see you too. So this has been a long time coming, me and you. We've been talking about doing a podcast together for like years, and finally technology got easy enough where we could do it easily from our house.
Yeah, Everezi gave us the platform, made it all come together.
Yep. Even though I don't really like Greg a whole lot, Greg from Everezi, he's got really great equipment and he makes him look really good on his podcast. So gotta love him. Get a Greg. He's a great. So I thought for the first episode of Unleashed with Ted and Adam, we could talk about something that's really pertinent today, which is the affordability crisis in our country. It's something that everyone's talking about, and we were talking before about that subject in the context of whether or not institutional ownership in SFR is like a good thing or a bad thing. And I was, neither one of us are on different sides. I think we're both on generally the same side, but I see a lot and I hear a lot from people that are out there in the market that are anywhere from wealthy institutional investors to just everyday people trying to make it. And I was curious, you've got this new platform that's all about affordable housing. I was curious, before we talk about that, hearing your thoughts on whether or not institutional ownership is actually a good thing, a net positive or a net negative in the market.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I can certainly relate with the comments about institutions coming in and bidding up prices.
Mm-hmm.
I personally don't believe that that's true. Where I view that the affordability issue comes from today is really, kind of primarily about a couple different things. It's about, there's not enough housing. So when we came out of the downturn, all the builders stopped building. We were building, the new unit supply that came online every year was about half of where it had been on average and half of where it needed to be to keep up with new household growth.
Okay.
And so as a result, today we're behind in terms of the overall availability of housing, versus the household growth.
So,
right.
Two things. I'm a broker. We make a market for SFR portfolios, built for rent, land and lots. It seems like there's plenty of inventory in major markets around the country because first-time home buyers aren't exactly in the market the way they used to be. And I hear like the media saying overall there's a housing shortage, but I also see that there's more inventory, like my backyard here in Charlotte, than there ever has been before, to the point where like builders are getting away in massive incentives. I think about that and I hear you saying that we got a housing shortage. I'm trying to reconcile those two things because I look at my backyard and I see nothing but grapevines,
Yeah, it's a great point to point out, the national figures that people talk about,
right,
versus what's happening locally.
Yeah.
If you look at nationally, the figures that it's rising above, but we're basically, between 3 and 4 months of inventory.
Yep.
On market. Average is more like 6.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what a potential explainer for what you're talking about, what's happening locally, especially in a place like Charlotte, is that what's the price level of homes that are being built and, versus what people can afford.
Well, and that's the thing. So like, in Charlotte, they just changed, and I think a lot of other municipalities are doing this, like other markets around the country. They changed the UDO, the Unified District Ordinance, where like everyone that was developing single family detached now got permission to do higher density townhomes. So a lot of people are actually building and developing higher density townhomes, which are naturally like entry level products. So a lot of that,
Are they? I mean, what's entry level, right? Because I mean, we see a lot of
325, that is me is entry level right now. Like a 325 price point, 350 price point. Doesn't get much lower.
I mean, basically that rents for something like $2,300, right?
For me, it might be affordable to guys like me and you, but to like the person right out of college or the person struggling to just make ends meet, $2,200 a month is a pretty high rent payment, right? And I guess that kind of dovetails into the thing you're doing, to the thing you're doing with Homestead Affordable. Is that like a problem?
I think that's the point. That's the point that I'm making, though, right? Is that at $2,300, it's still more than most people can afford.
Yeah.
Right. And so you're looking at it. If you have 3 times rent that you have to be able to qualify to get a place, you're looking at you have to have income of like $6,600 a month, which puts you at like 80 or maybe even closer to $90,000 a year income.
Right.
Maybe for a household that works, but for an individual, it's certainly above the median income across the country.
Right.
In a place like Charlotte, higher income. Where I live in Southern California, it's definitely, higher income areas. So that's not quite the same equation.
Mm-hmm.
But what I think my point in how I view it is that we're behind in new housing supply. Interest rates are high to make things even less affordable.
Mm-hmm.
And new construction isn't really appropriately fixing the problem because of the cost structure. New builders aren't able to bring on new units that really are at the level where they need to be to satisfy affordability.
Okay. Yep.
So what?
Good.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was going to ask you. So I get it. There's an affordability, crisis in the country, and the new inventory that's coming out from home builders, are either like unaffordable for the average American, or the average rent that's being built, and rented in like the $2,000, $2,200 a month range isn't really all that affordable either. So we were talking about this subject in relation to Homestead Affordable. I'm intently interested. Is this like the problem you're trying to solve with making housing stock and rental stock actually affordable for people that are making at or below the median income level in the country? Is that what you're all about? Or
well, right. And affordability isn't just limited to the everyday American, right? There's also lower income folks that are dependent upon, subsidized rent, things like that. That the issue is potentially even greater for people like that. And if you look at, again, national statistics, if you break it down market by market, it's going to look a little bit differently. But some of the national statistics are that only 60% of people that actually have a housing choice voucher are able to find a house to live in. Wow, that's crazy. So even with the budget out there, like all these waiting lists for the to get on the housing choice voucher program, they're all they're waitlisted, right? They're all closed, and you go to places like Texas, they haven't been open for almost a decade.
So you have people walking around with a housing choice voucher program money that literally can't find a home to rent. Is that right?
Only 60% of the people that actually have a voucher and are going to look for a home can find out.
So 40% of the people just shit out of luck. There's not enough housing supply of affordable housing that accepts those kind of vouchers to give them an option, right?
They found the place that they want to live. They went through the process to go through the wait list to be able to get the voucher.
Yep.
And by the time that voucher was awarded, they have 6 months to find a house.
Yep.
And 40% of those people can't find a house.
So is that a function of the fact that like there are not enough people that are accepting those vouchers to, like, why is that? Like, what's the housing stock that the people that are getting them are plugging into, and why isn't there more of that? If there are renters out there walking around with money, it would seem like people would be jumping at the opportunity to offer housing to them, especially when they have government money that they're spending on rent.
Right. I think there's a few things. I mean, one in particular is that I think there's a stigma that revolves around a housing choice voucher tenant, or Section 8, kind of with the legacy term of the same, population.
Yep.
I think it's been difficult to work with the housing authorities, the, investors or property owners They've seen what it's like. You have to get multiple inspections where you might be able to get a tenant in maybe 2 weeks after leasing it and have them move in with a market tenant.
Okay.
You might get pushed to 2 months because you're working through the inspection process and the rent level approval process. And so I think that makes it difficult. There's a stigma associated with, a lower income tenant, but the dynamics and the design of the program, I think it's really a misnomer because, by virtue of delinquency, something like that, the tenant's only responsible for 30% of their rent.
Yep.
So if you have maybe an institutional manager or somebody who's actively managing their property, by definition, you can't get behind in the rent.
Right. So is Homestead Affordable developing housing for this audience? Is that what you guys are doing?
What we're doing is we're identifying older homes in high opportunity areas that are obsolete and need rehab.
Okay.
So we're going to identify those homes, come in, rehab them up to an institutional standard. I know we've already loaded institutions, here. Well, top of market standard is another word that we can say. So
yep,
we're creating a great house that may not have been in that same condition or available to a housing choice voucher tenant.
Okay.
In a high opportunity area. And we're going to the housing authorities first to try to help satisfy the need of their wait lists.
Okay. So are the housing authorities like defining the areas that they're willing to offer these housing choice voucher programs in? Like, can you only buy houses in a certain geography in a metro in order to have it be applicable to this program, to the housing choice voucher program?
In general, the tenant can choose where they want to take their voucher.
Okay.
But there are some housing authorities that don't offer vouchers.
Look at this trait. So there's a market of millions of people that are walking around with rent money with nowhere to spend it. And for some reason, investors, large and small institutional investors, haven't noticed this and aren't currently building that housing supply. And you saw that vacuum and decided that Homestead is the solution. Do I have that right?
Don't tell anybody, Adam. But
by doing this podcast, to just let people know, because it seems like an interesting thing to me where I see funds all the time raising money for all kinds of interesting strategies. Affordable housing's one, eco-friendly housing's another. All kinds of things. I find it hard to believe that there's actual need attached to capital walking around out there, and there's just not enough of these houses to service that need. That's crazy to me.
Yeah, I think it's one of the biggest reasons why investors haven't, attacked it or approached it like we are is it's difficult. It's not easy. I mean,
what's so difficult about it? What's the hardest part about it?
I think it's working through the kind of red tape and bureaucracy of the housing authorities.
Yeah, that could be a killer threat.
Dealing with potential pushback in certain neighborhoods and bringing a housing choice voucher tenant. I think a lot of that stigma is getting removed from the market.
Yep.
But that's really the whole goal for us, is to try to take these high opportunity areas. That's places with good schools, with jobs, and then good retail where people aren't forced to go shop at 7-Eleven and pay
sure.
$20 for a stick of butter or whatever it is. And
is that hard? Because people that live in nice areas love helping the less fortunate, as long as it happens somewhere else. I've noticed this, because I come from New York, and everyone was all for helping the poor and helping the disadvantaged, and bringing people, into the middle class and a higher standard of living. And this happened in particular in a town called Ossining, where I lived in New York, and they built a big housing project right in the middle of Ossining. Fast forward 20 years, Ossining is one of the places in New York that have a much higher degree of crime, a lot higher degree of blight. And, I'm not saying that's going to happen to every neighborhood that, welcomes in programs like, Section 8 or Housing Choice Voucher, but it's certainly it's a worry. And I'm sure part of the impact you get, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a valid point, and I definitely understand what you're saying. I think it's a strong distinction to make between a housing project and, I actually think that the design of the vouchers is really great, and especially to kind of bridge situations like that so you don't end up with it. And it doesn't even need to be tied to income level. Whenever you have a higher density of people in a small area, it's stuff happens. I think it's going to lead to higher crime. I noticed a similar thing, and I just expect it to happen with the way that ADUs, accessory dwelling units, are getting rolled out in Southern California.
Okay.
I heard about a project in San Diego, this is about a year ago, where this developer was taking something like 2 acres and putting 200 units on it with no parking.
Wow. Yeah. What?
My first reaction is like, do you have a satellite police department you're going to put there?
You wonder what that's going to look like in like 25 years when that actually grows and, becomes that much density is going to breed, a bad element, I feel like. And I know it was part of the reason why I like the idea of offering, single family rental, like scatter site single family rental as housing choice voucher, because it's fundamentally different than like a housing project where you're bringing a massive amount of people into one area that's going to fundamentally change that area. It's not, there's a fundamental difference, I feel like, right? I guess
100%. Yeah. I mean, in this whole kind of movement started, this is a government movement, right? But this started, I guess, in the 60s or 70s. I'm not sure exactly when it happened, but that was a movement in a lot of cities to get rid of the housing projects, because that's what happened. And, even though you're providing, literally just a roof for somebody to live under, this is not what people call a high opportunity area, because it's all, what's the motivation for businesses to come in? They know that there's no money close to there.
Yep.
So how can they support a store? So the only way that they can survive is to have much higher margin opportunities, if anything at all.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess that's why they call them ghettos, right? Because you have this massive influx of lower income people, and becomes like there's no money in the area, so like naturally it doesn't attract the better stores, and it becomes economically disadvantaged. And I guess the difference between that and what you're doing is creating housing stock that's kind of spread out all throughout all kinds of areas that are offering these people a better way to live.
Yeah, and I think going back to your point about people of higher income in nice areas want to help people when it's not in their backyard.
Yeah,
I think that the voucher program provides opportunities where they really won't notice a difference.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
They're living in the same house for all intents and purposes. They're, paying rent and satisfying, upstanding citizens like everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's just income. And it's really, I think that's the intent of what government assistance and subsidized assistance should be. It should be helping somebody get on their feet. I think that if we can provide housing for people in these high opportunity areas, help them get on their feet, then it's just a matter of time before they don't need the subsidy any longer.
Right. Yep. That's actually, is this like a riskier investment for like capital than like a standard, like, I don't know, middle of the road SFR, or even like a luxury play, or a short-term rental play? Like, in terms of risk profile, is it riskier or is it less risky, or is it kind of the same risk profile as any other SFR investment?
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, SFR provides, opportunity for diversity across the board more than other asset classes. And I think this strategy even more so. When it comes to the tenant base, yes, we are working to create housing for housing choice voucher tenants, but there's nothing tying us to those tenants. So if for whatever reason, let's say we just missed and there's no demand in this particular area for a voucher tenant, or we missed the payments or whatever, we're underwriting to market rent. And so if it takes us longer to lease to a tenant, or not at the rate that we want to lease to, we can always open it up for lease to a market rate tenant.
I'd imagine the chances of you missing are a lot less than like a regular buyer trying to create a product for a certain level rent, because can't you identify the areas that these housing choice voucher recipients are actually getting their, like, how many housing choice voucher program vouchers are out there, right? And where they're essentially looking, because isn't it all tracked by the government? Like, isn't there more visibility on who they are and how much they have and where they might be looking to rent?
100%. Yeah, we know before we get in. I mean, that's what I was saying. Like, if we miss, I don't think that that's likely. But if we happen to, or there was some unforeseen change, there's been a lot of talk about budget.
Yeah,
I think ultimately the budget talks are going to turn out that there's really no change. But let's say if there were some change and there, for whatever reason, the amount of subsidized rent just wasn't as much available.
Yeah,
we can still rent to a market tenant like anybody else.
Got it. So talking about like affordability, everyone's been talking about the 50-year mortgage and like the 50-year mortgage in respect to it making the American dream more possible. I got my own opinion about that. I'm curious to hear what yours is.
Yeah, I mean, I've been watching the comments all over the place on LinkedIn and other today.
Yeah.
I mean, some of this stuff, I think the most prominent one that I've seen is showing the amount of interest that you pay with a 50-year mortgage versus a 30-year. And I just think that that's the wrong way to look at it.
Yeah.
Well, how many people do you know that have paid off their 30-year mortgage?
Hardly any before they refinance again. Yeah.
Exactly.
It's like a medication for an underlying illness that has no chance of ever, curing the underlying illness, right? It's basically saying to people, you're going to take out a much longer mortgage, pay a ton more in interest. It's not going to help you build wealth any better. It's not going to be a pathway to actually building generational wealth or something that your family can depend on. It's basically just so you could say you can own a home, right? And with a 50-year mortgage, I don't see, like, the whole point of owning a home is so you can build equity in a home. And doing it over 50 years versus 30 years, given the regular life expectancy, like in the United States, is like what? How long will you live, Ted? 75, 80, 85?
I mean,
That's
maybe
adult life.
Maybe I have a little bit of an altered view. You're living in Southern California and seeing the crazy appreciation over my lifetime.
Could I? Sure.
I just don't see that the actual wealth building from owning a home comes from paying down your mortgage. I think it comes from appreciation.
Yeah. And I don't know if the, availability of a 50-year mortgage is going to make a damn bit of difference in the people that would actually use it being able to afford a home with a down payment, whether it's a 50-year mortgage or a 30-year mortgage. I think you probably have to come up with the same down payment at the end of the day. It's just going to be a lower mortgage payment, I think, amortized over a longer period of time.
Yeah, I mean, I think, all things equal, it lowers the cost to enter a home, as a purchase.
Yeah.
And so from that perspective, I think it addresses affordability. Along with that, we just like interest rates, when interest rates come down, yes, it makes it more affordable, but it also adds purchasing power to the market.
Yeah.
So I think that you are also going to see increased inflation. I think if you're doing that at the same time as rapid increase in supply, that kind of gets us back, could be a decent shot to get us back to a more kind of normal market where we're not so crazy out of whack on the affordability side.
Yeah.
Because that's really what's happening, is that you're misbalanced. We're so far on one side. There needs to be some sort of effort. I mean, I think if you just look at it kind of like math equation, logically, that would just point to, prices need to be lower. But if you look at the result of that hits so many people in the core asset that they have in their life, right? For wealth building, their home. So,
and I guess I can't predict what's going to happen on the other side of that. If you have a 50-year mortgage, is it going to mean people are less likely to sell their homes? Because I don't know. People are just likely to sell their home with a 30-year mortgage as long as interest rates continue to be low, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that goes back to purchasing power, right? So, I mean, I think it ultimately creates liquidity. I think net, you're going to have a higher volume of transactions because people are more mobile. They can afford more.
Yeah, no doubt. So that was interesting. It's cool hearing your feedback on that. So you're in capital raising mode right now, right? So you're out there, you're building the strategy with your affordable housing platform. Like, what's kind of the next few months look like for you? Raising a bunch of money, buying a bunch of houses in one or a few markets, and then bringing them. Is that the plan?
Yeah. So how did you know I was raising capital? Could you see all the bumps on my face?
Because you have a pulse and you're in the real estate business. Isn't that right? Any operator in the real estate business is always raising money.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting time. I'm an operator, just like you said.
Yeah.
I'm an operator. I haven't made a living off of raising capital. And so I think what I'm faced with right now, there's a couple different things. One is it's a little bit new to me. And so a lot of things that I'm figuring out personally, but also in the market, I think what you have right now is that there's not a right answer for anything, right? Like
Yep.
there's not like one right answer. And we talked about it briefly, but I think that we're on the front side of the third major capital deployment cycle in single family.
Mhm.
And so, if you look at the cycles we've had so far, SFR 1.0 was basically buying high quality homes at a discount. When you get to SFR 2.0, there was really no change in the buy box. And there were just people, investors were just doing the same thing with cheaper capital.
Mhm.
And so in both of those scenarios, the answer was really obvious. And so it was like, you didn't have to go and educate people on what the opportunity was. You just had to, check all the rest of the boxes. Like you're, credible, dependable, you could do it. People don't think you're going to lose money with you. And now I think what it is that on top of needing to do all of those things, there's also this massive kind of matching effort that has to take place in capital raise. And, that's what I find myself doing the most of. It's like, it's not even obvious who the investors are. Right. And so it's just having a massive amount of conversations and really mostly those conversations are not very much pitch.
Yeah.
It's really much more about asking questions. What are you interested in? What are your constraints? What are your requirements? And that's kind of.
Well, it's awesome, man. If anyone do it, you can. You got you were a consultant at Roofstock. You help True Family Homes build their portfolio. You built Fortune Acquisitions, and now you're doing this. It's like if someone's looking to put capital, anyone that understands how to find SFR, purchase SFR, and operate SFR, you've pretty much done that over the last 20, 25 years. It's incredible. You can't do it.
Right.
It's like a movie's
Can I bring you out on the road with me?
Hell yeah, man. I just want. I'm a broker, man. As long as you pay me 5%, I'm good.
There you go. Hey, that's cheaper than a lot of these people that I come in contact with.
There it is, man. Well, hey, this was Ted Farry and Adam Stern Unleashed on Everresi Media. Thank you to Gregory Frank for putting us on. And hey, man, it was great talking to you, Ted.
You too, Adam. Thanks, Greg. I really appreciate it. Great opportunity and great platform. So thank you.
Yeah, I'll see you forward.